Question. I'm trying to.
Speak at your voice.
We're trying to understand if apostasy law is reasonable in Islam. That's what we're trying to understand. For a law to be reasonable, the basis for conviction, the basis for finding criminality should be reasonable. According to Islam, when someone leaves Islam, depending on when and what and whatever else, he might be liable to receive death penalty. And so, clearly, the Islamic Allah thinks this is a grave offense, one of the gravest of offenses.
So did the Old Testament
Listen,
Jesus,
this
didn't they?
I'm speaking right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, completely. I let you speak. So the Islamic Allah thinks this is one of the gravest of offenses. Now, I would like to think that if you have never seen if no one has ever seen someone,
But it's not Allah is not a person though. You
please,
can't say someone.
But please listen.
But you're mischaracterizing
But
it.
please
You
listen.
can't say
But
someone.
please listen.
Okay.
Now you're beginning to panic. Please listen. Let me finish and then respond. When no one has ever seen a particular entity in human history ever, for anyone to be convicted of death penalty for not submitting to that entity would be utterly ridiculous and insane. And that is the apostasy law in Islam. Even Muhammad has no clue according to the Quran. But even if we ignore that point, no one has seen the Islamic Allah in history at any point in time. So to impose death penalty is ridiculous. In contrast, if you want to compare, I can compare, and that was a comparison we were having earlier. God of the Bible, in some way, shape or form, showed himself up at multiple points in time. So if you're concerned about the apostasy law in the Torah, I could demonstrate that first of all, God of the Bible, Jehovah, showed up at Mount Sinai. He showed up not just to one person, not just to a small team, but to an entire nation, number one. Number two, he asked the nation for willingness to enter into a covenant with him, and they voluntarily entered into a covenant, and subsequent to that, to honor the sanctity of that covenantal relationship, there was an apostasy law. Whether it was imposed or not ever in history, we can discuss later, but this is the theory behind it. When you have seen God, I'm assuming we can both agree, if you have seen God, in a manner you know that is God, and if you're willing to say, look, I've understood you are God, that's it, I'm taking you seriously. Once you have gone to that extent, if you rebel against God, then good luck. I'm assuming we could agree on that. Yeah? So that is reasonable, but apostasy law in Islam is one of the most wicked and ridiculous things. That's my argument. Please respond.
Okay. I just want to find out further. I have a few more questions about how he appeared in the Old Testament, because I don't know too much about that.
Okay.
But I was just wondering, like in the Old Testament, how did he appear, like on Mount Sinai,
Yeah.
and then any other instances? Like how did he appear on the earth?
Sure.
Because I want to know like more detail about that.
Sure. So Jehovah as God appeared to the first of all, Jehovah appeared to the first human being, Adam. And whilst the Noahic flood showed up, when Noahic flood showed up, if we do the math in relation to how long people lived and so on, there is essentially you can work out that everyone who lived even until the last generation before the flood occurred had access to Adam, who was a forefather. Everyone knew he was a forefather, and he had seen God in person. So that was the experience pre-Noahic flood. Now, of course, Adam was the forefather for people of post-Noahic flood, and therefore this account is important because Noah is the one who was transferred from pre-Noahic flood to post-Noahic flood. So now you have Noah, but if you move further, you have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. JC, is that yours? The cover. Yes. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the patriarchs. All three of them interacted with God at multiple points. Some of them saw in person God in what is called theophanies. Abraham, for example, saw a theophany of God. It's recorded in Genesis chapter 18. Even Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, actually heard God speak. As a matter of fact, one of the names of Jehovah, as recorded in the Bible, is El Roi. I have heard God. I have heard God who hears me. So she experienced God in a particular place, not in Arabia, which is a Quranic story. But anyway, long story short, patriarchs, even Hagar, but after this, certainly Moses, 10 plagues you'll be familiar with at Egypt. The 10 plagues were tremendous supernatural events, which were signs to not just the nation of Israel. Can you imagine a prophet someone claiming to be a prophet showing up and saying, hey, look, there is going to be an infestation of frogs across our nation. And he declares, and it happens. 10 such plagues happen even before they leave Egypt, not just as a testimony for the nation of Israel, but also as a testimony for Egypt itself, for the nation of Egypt itself. And therefore they were required to obey, because they had seen the signs and wonders of that God. And so God expected things from people who only got the opportunity to witness Him. When people did not have the opportunity, He doesn't destroy them. He doesn't demand obedience from them. And so you have these records in the Bible and various other theophanies subsequently. Moses clearly, of course, spoke to God, burning bush, you might have heard. And eventually an entire nation of Israel actually sees the glory of God at Mount Sinai, which is where they received the Torah. The Torah was received, the 2 tablets of stone. The first essentially were carved by God, and given to Moses. So that is the level to which, through evidence, they experience God. And so far, I'm only giving you the claims. When time permits, I can give you even a historical basis for why these claims are reliable. In contrast, even as per claims in the Quran or in Islam, particularly in the Quran, you have nothing million miles similar to this at all. So when the nation of Israel had seen God, they had a free choice to reject Him if they wanted to, but they entered into a covenant, post which there was the apostasy law. Post which there was an apostasy law, and the way I see, therefore, given the context, the apostasy law in the Torah, the way I see that is similar to a marital contract. Between a husband and a wife, we would expect sanctity of relationship. Yeah? And if a husband cheats and goes, or the wife cheats and goes, I'm assuming we could all say, look, that's terrible. This is terrible backstabbing in a committed, lifelong relationship. That is how we see the apostasy law in the Torah. The apostasy law in Islam is nothing of this sort. No one had the option to choose. This was forced upon them, and so it is irrational, wicked, and ridiculous. So that's my comparison. Please respond.
I just want to ask, does every single person that is a Christian, for example, have they all seen God in one way or another?
What I would say is most, if I'm clear, of course, I haven't interacted with every Christian, I can't speak on behalf of every Christian. But what I would say is if people become Christians properly, according to how the Bible lays out how Christians should become disciples, according to Jesus, unless you're really convinced, you don't have to follow Him. You shouldn't follow Him, as a matter of fact. He sent people away. When you're not convinced entirely, He sent people away. You may know Apostle Peter is one of the 12 apostles. He told Apostle Peter, are you still with me? Are you not leaving me? So he was looking forward to everyone leaving him until and unless they are thoroughly convinced. To which Apostle Peter replied, who will I go to? You have the words of eternal life. And because of that confession, he was, held together with Jesus. So the point to you would be, if I go with the biblical revelation of what should be expected of good Christians, of how people become Christians, then I would say everyone should have in some way, shape or form, they should get to know Jesus properly.
And then the people in the Old Testament, did they all see like Jesus or God physically with their own eyes? So like those appearances that he made in the Old Testament, were they like literally physical appearances? Did they actually see God with their own
Mount
physical
Sinai,
eyes?
Mount Sinai appearance is an like how you see the airplane right now.
Yeah.
But of course, you're not close enough to the airplane, so you can't touch to see and you know get every detail. Every detail that you would like to get, perhaps about the airplane. But you're seeing, it's appearing, it's part of your experience in real life. Even though you don't know many implementation details.
Yeah.
Is it aluminium? Is it something else? We don't know. Is it even some sort of a hologram? We don't know. But what we saw is what we saw. Likewise, all of the nation of Israel saw the 10 plagues in Egypt at the time of leaving Egypt, and all of the nation of Israel saw and experienced God at Mount Sinai. All of the nation of Israel were fed by that God for 40 years. Manna. They ate a special food which fell down from heaven in a special way, and they also had intermittently quails, and other special food also from that same God. So that generation experienced God, and the next generation even experienced God in a very supernatural way, which God expected them to carry forward as a testimony to their offsprings, to their children.
Yeah.
Now, God does not expect the neighboring nations or people of other genealogies to take this seriously, because they didn't see.
Yeah.
But Egypt, he expected them. That's why he expected them to leave Israel, because they saw.
Yeah.
But for example, I don't know where you are from, where I am from Tamil Nadu in India. And my ancestors, God wouldn't have expected them to take this seriously at that time, because they didn't see.
Yeah.
But the people who saw experienced 40 years of experience, which God expected to be faithfully handed down through the generations to that nation alone. It wasn't forced upon anyone else. The Torah was not forced upon anyone else. None of the requirements, legal requirements of the Torah was imposed upon any other people group at all. No jihad, no apostasy law going around, no taking over, nothing. It was purely meant to be for a people group who had experienced God. That's fair. That's reasonable. And that nation had voluntarily entered into a contract. In other words, the Bible is marvelous from what I see. The Quran, unfortunately, these Muslim fellows, I don't know when you became a Muslim.
2 years ago.
2 days ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. I don't know what your background is, but I'd really like to get to know. I genuinely think Islam is nothing like the Bible. It is the very opposite. Nothing in Islam is sensible, reasonable, or good. It's the worst form of terribleness that could ever happen in human history, and the worst form of irrational, let's say, behavior that could be expected. So that's what I comment.
So what do you think about some people in the Old Testament? Okay, their previous generations, they saw God physically, but they themselves...
I didn't use the word physically, but go ahead, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I meant like, because
like this, for example, the gentleman, you see, but he doesn't need to be a physical body. Of course, in his case,
obviously
as a
not a
human
physical body, but I'm saying like see
something
with your
that you
eyes.
can see in your real life.
With your eyes.
Yeah.
So some people that were born, their earliest generations saw God with their eyes, but they never saw God
the later
with their eyes.
generations.
Yeah. So what do you think about those people? Would it
Guess
be morally acceptable for them to just be like, no, I don't want to... Do you think it's acceptable that they fall on the same punishment for apostasy as like the earlier generations that saw God physically
What's
with
your
their
name?
eyes? Cameron.
Cameron,
Yeah.
lovely to see you. You know, you're striking gold, striking pressure right now, and the question you've asked, sorry, the question you've asked is marvelous, and this is the kind of reasoning that I'd like for you to go through. When you go through them, you will see the Bible is marvelous. The Quran is nothing but marvelous. Everything opposite. And the question is lovely. Guess what? You are entirely right. So let's say our generation saw, let's say today we experience God. Let's say that's Mount Sinai, you have experienced God. So for God to expect us, and we are given a choice also, and we say, okay, we want to take you, God, seriously, and we enter into a covenant. So in our covenant, for God to expect is reasonable, like you rightly said, like we have agreed.
They've seen God physically. Oh, sorry, with their own eyes.
Sure.
Yeah.
As for the later generations, you are entirely right. Depending on the context, it might be reasonable, it might not be. And that is why I'll clarify what
Yeah.
the Bible's judgment is marvelous in this regard. If the nation in this generation and the next generation faithfully pass down information, faithfully taught your children and your children who are expected to learn from you faithfully, then God would have required a similar thing from the next generation and the next generation and the next generation and so on, because of faithful communication. One God, in other words, God would expect Cameron, if you trust your parents and your parents have been reasonably good in your mind and they don't lie, you've seen them to be good people of good heart and so on, and if they hand over something as what they had received from their similar caliber parents, God would expect you to take that seriously. Unfortunately, in that situation alone, when there is faithful communication, God would impose or impose the Toraic expectation throughout generations, how many ever, as long as there is faithful communication. But in reality, that did not happen. People messed up, people veered away, disobedience and so on. And guess what? God of the Bible is marvelous. And you would find in history of the Tanakh, of the Hebrew scriptures, you would find as time progressed, God became more and more lenient. Many times when God should have and could have imposed Toraic expectations on the people, he did not.
So what do you mean by Torah expectations?
When you know God, when you see God, if you still rebel for justice,
Yeah.
the Toraic expectations, i.e. the judgment of rebellion,
Yeah.
has to be implemented.
Yeah.
If you have seen God, yet you choose to rebel, for justice's sake,
And that law should be applied.
should be
upon
applied.
for-
Should
yeah,
be applied.
for
That
apostasy.
would be reasonable. And because if you rebel against a God whom you have seen, you are, that's only the beginning of your wickedness. God knows what else you could do. That's maybe demonstrative of your pride, arrogance and pride. You could go around murdering all sorts of different people and so on. You have no regard for law and order. It's akin to someone going around right now, shooting at the police and so on.
Yeah.
That kind of behavior. But
Yeah.
this is clearly worse, because we're talking about human police versus God. And so Toraic expectations should have been implemented if there was faithful communication from generation to generation. But what we know in human history is that people slowly and steadily veered away from God in the nation of Israel.
Yeah.
And so God did not. God gradually became lenient. And you might know of the popular story of the adulteress caught in the act of adultery, who was brought before Jesus. And people said, hey, look, we have to stone her to death, because stoning to death is the penalty for an adulteress. And this lady was caught in adultery. They said, hey, look, this lady has been caught in adultery, stoned to death. That's what we expect. But Jesus said, because, all of you have messed up. That's the point he was trying to make. All of you have messed up, and you expect only her to have the penalty. So he said, the one among you without sin, let him stone her to death first.
Yeah.
So that is the beauty of the Torah. That's the beauty of the Torah. Long story short, you have God's expectations from the Torah, whether it is apostasy law or sexual morality, impeccable. Impeccable. In the Quran, on the other hand, Islam, on the other hand, everything in Islam is wicked. Like I said, expecting apostasy law, when no one has at any point in time has seen the Islamic Allah. And if you strictly go by the Quran, even Muhammad did not see the Islamic Allah. If you strictly go by the Quran. If you go by later day fantasies, hadiths and so on, you may get a fancy story of how he was confused in the Hira, in the cave and so on. But the Quran actually contradicts. I'm writing a book on this, my second book. I've written my first book on this, the Islam, on the violence and the political ideology of Islam, the coming Islamic takeover. So, are you with me so far? Have you heard what I've said so far? Islam is a terrible religion. So what are your thoughts on this? What I've said to you so far?
So my first thought, just the example that you gave about the adulterous woman, that wasn't in any of the original manuscripts of the New Testament.
That was?
It wasn't.
Says you.
It only came like a few centuries afterwards, and it was found in later manuscripts, but it was never found in the earliest manuscripts.
Says you. Well,
That's
what are
I've seen. What Bible? I don't know. What Bible do you use? But which?
I've asked a particular question.
No, I'm just asking like for that example because I know that
what
it's not
what I use is
from the
irrelevant.
Bible.
You were
I know,
saying
but I'm saying I have the New International Version, and then I open up my Bible to that verse about the adulterous woman, and I'll see a footnote, and the footnote says that it isn't found in the earliest manuscripts.
which one?
The New International Version.
You're not answering. Maybe you're not understanding.
But I'm
my
no,
question.
but I'm just.
Maybe you're not
asking.
understanding my
I know,
question.
But that's
I'll
my
ask-
first one. That's my first question.
No, that's not a
Just about
question.
that
No,
example.
you need to. Please one second.
Sorry. It's my
You
just
are
my
asserting.
correction.
You are
But,
asserting that story wasn't there,
That's-
and I'm asking you.
If I have my New International Bible, I open it up to the Gospels where that story is found, and I go to the footnote of that story. It says it's not found in the earliest manuscripts.
You're
So is that
repeating right
true
now.
or is that
You're-
not true?
You're repeating right now. You can ask me, but earlier
Yeah.
you asserted. Now you're asking me. I can help you understand.
No, I'm just wondering about that example that you
Sure.
gave.
You can.
because I know
I can
it's
clarify.
just
I can clarify. I don't know if you have studied, but this is a different topic. Yeah, this is a
sorry,
minor.
sorry. Yeah,
this
it's
is
just
a
one
minor.
example, yeah.
So I want to quickly get
Yeah,
back.
if we can,
Long
we don't
story
have
short.
to answer that question, then it's fine.
No. I can answer. I've written
Yeah.
a book. I've written a book on what we know of the New Testament and how we arrive at the truth in relation to the New Testament. I've written a book
Yeah.
on this compact. So I can
But it's just,
I can get to
I
that.
just wanted to say that because
That
that's
is an
just
irrelevant
what
point.
the-
That's an indoctrination you've received. I don't know where. I don't know how you have
but
understood.
it's from the New International Version
The
of
New
the Bible.
International Version is not a manuscript. I'm asking.
I know, but in the
You're
footnote
into the
of
Cameron,
that
please,
Bible.
one second. Now your third time you're saying, Cameron, if you want to be a sensible man,
It's fine.
Merely-
It's fine. We don't have to argue about that. I
no,
just
no.
wanna
But more
move
importantly,
on. Yeah.
I want you to understand that based on what you've said to me so far, and you avoiding the simple question I asked so far,
I know, it's
you
just
don't.
one
But
thing
you're
that I wanted to-
interjecting. now.
Sorry.
You do not have basic information. It's called what I call brainwashing. When you don't have basic information to conclude and to repeat the conclusion, mere repetition doesn't help. So I'm going to ask one last time,
Yeah.
and that is the question you need to ask to assert what you asserted earlier, that wasn't
Yeah,
in
sorry.
the Bible
The original
originally.
topic, yeah.
So the question I asked you was, what manuscripts have you studied to arrive at the conclusion that story wasn't there in the originals?
I haven't studied any manuscripts, but it's the Bible that I looked at in the footnotes of that Bible.
Sure.
That I looked
But
at.
because when you don't study manuscripts, you're not qualified to make that comment. You are qualified to begin researching.
But did the author have authority to make that thing? He made the New International
You're
Version.
not asking another question.
Yeah,
Cameron,
because I never made that statement.
Sure.
The Bible that I
Cameron,
read
I'll tell you
made
this.
that
I'll tell you this. I am willing to speak to you in detail about New Testament manuscripts.
Okay, yeah.
For in short, because I don't want to digress from the original point.
Yeah,
we were
we can
discussing.
go back to the original
In
thing,
short,
it's fine.
if I can quickly just say,
Yeah.
when you study manuscriptal evidence properly, that's not the I arrive at quite the opposite conclusion because of some specific reasons. It has to do with something called majority text and all sorts of other things.
Yeah.
So we'll come to that
yeah.
later.
Yeah.
So Jesus, God of the Bible, his expectations, even in the Torah, even in relation to punishments given in the Torah, are reasonable. And are demonstrative of God and the people showing sanctity to relationships, honoring relationships. A covenant must be honored. When people had the choice to enter in, which is how God always entered into covenants, whether it is with Abraham or with Jacob, Isaac, Jacob, or any of the subsequent people. The Quran is quite the opposite. No evidence, no reason, no choice. So Islam is a terrible religion. Terrible. The very opposite. Irrational, non-evidential, couldn't care about truth and reason and giving a brain for people to think, but rather is forced through violence, coercion. Evil. This is evil. This is the very opposite of the Bible. So this alone should make your bells ring right now.
When I asked you earlier about the generations that never saw God with their own eyes. So you said it was still morally acceptable. I'm just confirming. You said it was still morally acceptable because of family, because their families told them from generation to generation.
I said,
what was the word that you said?
if the families had communicated, it
communication.
would have been acceptable. But in the nation of Israel, they unfortunately did not faithfully communicate. So God of the Bible, God of Israel, you can see in history, you can see God of Israel in the Old Testament gradually became more and more lenient. The Torah was not implemented. Why? Because God realized, look, the later generations did not see me directly, neither did their parents faithfully pass on, therefore I can't force them. And this is impeccable, this is phenomenal. Great God, marvelous God, kind God. Whereas in the Quran, can you imagine, 7th century nonsense, even in 7th century no one saw, even in 7th century, even if you are around Muhammad, it wouldn't have been reasonable to expect you to become a Muslim. And they're trying to force this nonsense today. And look at the mob that went just behind us. Mobsters, these are proper gangsters. They go there, proper mafia. This is a proper mafia ring. And they want to impose, look, that's, I don't know if you know those people. That gentleman at the center is called Madman Masjid. He is a proper madman. That's his name, first name. And there are a couple of other people there. Hashid, Maseh, and all sorts of people. And they want to impose Sharia today. Look at those faces. Do you think any one of them have any clue? Look at them. Look at them. They'll be angry within minutes, employ violence within minutes, but will be utterly clueless. And they want to impose death penalty today, not in Mecca, but in London. They want to take away the eyes of, Salman Rushdie. Eye gone. Because of these, the fellows who read the same book. Eye is gone. Look at him. He visits the UK. This fellow, I don't know what, I think he gets a charity visa. For mental ailment, I think they give him a special privilege. Please visit, let's allow him. And he comes and disturbs. In London, can you see? This is what happens. Islam is a terrible religion.
So just to confirm then, the generations, the later generations that never saw God with their eyes, would the law of apostasy apply to them if the family communication wasn't faithful?
If it was faithful,
so was the law of apostasy would have applied to them still?
Would have applied if the communication had faithfully happened.
And if it didn't, would it still be applied?
If it hadn't, it would not.
How would you know that?
That's exactly what God did. There are many details in the Torah. Hey. Look at him. Shame Dawa's younger brother. Look at him. Look at him. Look at him. Do you think they are retarded? What is going on with them?
Shut the fuck up.
Look at him. And they come here. They come here to do this nonsense. Can you imagine the level of delusion? This is Mecca. So, but you, why am I saying what I'm saying? What I am saying, in the Tanakh, as you read through later history, which is recorded, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, you find the same expectations were not forced. You find that. And I understand that because of various details, that God was lenient because they didn't know.
So but the law of apostasy, for example, were there any Jewish men that wanted to leave?
Jewish men left Judaism by the time of Jesus. Many were atheists.
The law of apostasy wasn't applied to them, even though they were still in the area.
Absolutely. This is why during the time of Jesus, many did not believe in resurrection. Many did not believe even in a God. Many were of all sorts of worldviews by Jesus' time. Because of this, because the Toraic apostasy law could not be applied because it wasn't faithfully communicated. And a God who is reasonable did not enforce it. But the Islamic Allah, the Muhammad invention Islamic Allah, the terrible Islamic Allah, they are forcing that in the UK today. Can you imagine the clowns coming behind? And why did the clowns do what they did? Because the Quran says, be harsh with them. Of course,
know
the
where it
Quran.
says that.
Oh, I've written an entire book, by the way, my dear friends. I don't know if you know.
It says we forbid you to be harsh with them, or we forbid you to not be harsh with them.
With who?
So it says you allow, like, it says we forbid you to not be harsh with them.
We forbid you to not be harsh. So in other words, be harsh.
No, I don't know like the correct wording, but it's like
But with
we
who?
forbid
Jews and
you-
Christians?
yeah.
Jews and Christians, my dear friend. Maybe you haven't studied that.
But no, it's a term called akhlaq. It's a proper like Islamic term, akhlaq.
But please
It
listen.
means like character, manners.
Please listen.
You know.
Please listen.
So I'm saying like just because they did it doesn't mean all Muslims
But-
do that. Doesn't mean it's in the Quran. Doesn't mean
But Cameron, please
anything
listen.
like that.
I've written an entire book on this. Going through the Quran. Have you gone through Quran Surah 59?
I don't know the verse on the top of my head.
But Surah 59, Surah 60, Al-Mumtahana, would you know?
I'll bring it up now.
No, I don't, but before you,
I'll bring it up now.
long
I've got
story
the app.
short, the verdict of the Quran. But before we go there, I want you to comment on the terribleness of the apostasy law first.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
otherwise
yeah.
it'll be. Islam is terrible merely through the evaluation of the apostasy law. How come you could follow that terrible religion?
So I'm just still wondering, like, for the people. So did the law just not apply to them at all for apostasy?
You're now
Did
repeating.
they-
I'm beginning to think.
But it's not
I'm
like,
beginning to.
It's
Cameron
not
wants.
clear to me. Like, did
Sure.
they?
Cameron.
Did people just not follow the
Cameron,
law, or
Cameron.
did they just say that the law is abolished
I
now?
know. I know you're asking
Because
this.
they didn't.
I know you're asking this. But right now, let me give you my gut feeling, based on my experience of speaking to thousands of Muslims over a couple of decades. I am beginning to think you are actually being insincere and perhaps in a crafty way trying to misguide.
I'm just trying to have a conversation with you. But
I am trying to have a very good conversation with you. I'm trying to ask, how could you support a religion whose apostasy law is terrible? That's what I've asked you. You haven't commented on that yet.
I'm still curious.
No, but focus on the Quran. I know you've asked multiple times. I'm pretty sure. I'll give you the name of the channel. You can certainly find out the recording and repeat.
that's why I'm
Quran
just wondering,
apostasy
like,
law. Quran apostasy law. It's terrible. What are your thoughts about that?
I don't think it's terrible. I think that
So-
there's a different viewpoint in Islam about Allah, about God appearing in front of people. We believe that He's like we are physically incapable of seeing Allah just because He's not a physical being. He doesn't, He can't make Himself like limited, okay, in like a human form or anything like that. So we don't believe it's like physically possible for us to see Him unless He like gives us that power like to do so. But even if He does, we can't really do it with our physical eyes.
Doesn't matter.
The only time it would happen is when we're in Jannah. Yeah, then He will permit us to see Him.
Cameron, once
See his
my
face.
point is very simple.
Yeah.
Regardless of the reason, you're just giving me a reason for why no one could see you.
Yeah.
But
so
please
it's just a
listen.
different
Please
viewpoint.
listen. I am not interested in the reasoning, although I disagree even with the reasoning based on the Quran. I am not interested in
That's
that
just
reason.
one version
But please
of my
one second.
reasoning.
But
I
please one
haven't finished my
But
reasoning.
please one second.
Yeah.
Regardless of the reason, if someone could not see an entity, to enforce obedience to that entity, and if someone fails to show that obedience, you are going to impose capital punishment on that person. For whatever reason, if you can't see the Islamic Allah, no one should have apostasy law in Islam, because no one could see, and one would hope that we have to be reasonable. So if I can't see, I can't say, look, that is God, and surrender my life. And therefore, if anyone says apostasy law, you will be killed. I'd say you are wicked and deviant. And that is, I'm not interested in the reasoning as to why you can't see him. Given that no one can see him, do you agree and appreciate with me that the apostasy law in Islam is a terrible law, wicked, deviant, and irrational?
So He solves that, what you would think is irrational and deviant. He solves that by giving us signs, giving us prophets, okay, to get to know Him, giving us miracles that nobody can explain, and that's how we can get to know God. We can't see Him, but He tells us who He is by giving us signs,
give you a simple
giving us
example.
miracles, giving us prophets.
My dear friend, If someone is sending you a mail, you receive 10 mails through your letterbox, the letterbox. 10 mails. Clearly someone is sending, you receive, now you go. And 10 years later, some fellow shows up and doesn't even actually show up. Some human being shows up and says, oh, all of them were sent by Mr. So-and-so because he can send mails. Are you saying you will foolishly agree to him just because he claims so?
No, but because he shows miracles. Like all prophets did miracles. That's how we know.
Which Islam?
We can't explain that.
Islam comes from the 7th century Muhammad. He did not do any miracle. All the
Split the
miracles.
moon. That's a miracle.
That's not. I'll come to that in a minute. Okay, we can discuss that in a little bit. But all prophets who did miracles were prophets of the Bible, not Muhammad. In Islam, the Islamic Allah, through the Islamic messenger, nothing miraculous happened.
Quran was a miracle as well.
Quran is junk. The only miracle of the Quran, I will agree, there is a miracle of the Quran, which is, despite being a junk, how does it make people like you follow it? That's the only miracle I see. Ridiculous literature, people foolishly falling for it, it's miraculous in my mind. But going to the, okay, so long story short, you have made no comments about the apostasy law. You're quite happy. Where are you from, Cameroon?
South Africa.
From South Africa, you are happy to impose apostasy law in South Africa, maybe across the globe, because the Quran's apostasy law applies across the globe. You're happy to do that, despite the fact of Islamic Allah not showing up anywhere. This is terrible.
There's a hadith that says if you go to a foreign country, you have to obey the laws of that country. It doesn't say you must go. It's not in the Quran, it's a hadith.
You know what the Quran says?
It's a hadith that
You know what the Quran says?
What does the Quran say?
The Quran says, go everywhere and take over. That's what the Quran says.
Which verse, which chapter and verse does it say?
I'll read it. So there are 5 specific places where the Quran dictates that that Islam has been taken to every country, because it's a religion of the judgment and takeover. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, Ayat 193. And fight them until persecution is no more and religion is all for Allah. But if they desist, then let there be no hostility except among wrongdoers. Al-Baqarah 2, Ayat 193. Surah Al-Anfal 8, Ayat...
So on the first one, 193.
Ayat 8, Ayat 39. And fight them until persecution is no more and religion is all for Allah. Religion is all for Allah. Al-Baqarah 2, Ayat 193.
Yeah.
Religion
So,
all for Allah.
Did you read the verses afterwards?
I have read the entire Quran, front
Did you
to
read
back.
the verses afterwards?
I have answered you.
Did you? Yeah, so you can read it afterwards. It gives the context.
I answered
And it
it.
says-
Listen carefully, Khalid.
And it says, do not let your hands throw you into destruction by withholding, and do good, for Allah certainly loves the good doers.
Look, I don't care about...
So as you can see afterwards, in the verse afterwards, it's giving context about that verse here.
So how does
Because it
it...
says, a sacred month, and all violations. So it's talking about the sacred months. It says,
Did you listen carefully?
if anyone attacks you, retaliate in the same manner. So it's talking about people attacking them
Please
and them
listen.
retaliating
But please
in the
listen.
same manner.
But please
So
listen.
that verse is out of context.
It is not verse out of context. It is
because
commentary.
it says, yeah.
You're making a comment out of panic. So if you...
I'm just reading the verses afterwards.
But the topic we were discussing, you said, if you go somewhere, take the law of the land. That's what you said.
Yeah, I can bring up that hadith.
No,
I said
no,
do
no,
that.
don't do anything. I am now demonstrating to you, excuse me, are you intelligent? I am now demonstrating to you through Surah Al-Anfal, chapter 8, Ayat 39, Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, 193. You gave me miscellaneous details, which
Yeah,
I
it's
couldn't
the
care less,
context
which I could
afterwards.
not care less
You
about.
don't care about the context.
No, listen carefully. I don't care about the miscellaneous details. My entire point is, according to this surah...
Sounds like you don't want to have a conversation. You just want to preach and
No, I don't want
interrupt me.
indoctrination. You have been indoctrinated, but I am not into indoctrination.
Nice to meet you.
All the...
Sorry for interrupting you and stuff. Thank you.
No. So you should be sorry that you could not make sense despite trying hard. And I completely understand why you have become a Muslim right now and smirking. Hello, Mr. Cameron.
Okay, so the guy left and there was no one. There was no comeback on the apostasy laws.
Anyway, long story short,
Apologies, family, for we got a concert happening in Speaker's Corner, so I think that's interfering with the signal. So I do apologize for the network connection.
versus the